Commander Vex Taylor adjusted his neural implants for the third time this cycle, watching the tactical display flicker with what he could only describe as impossible readings. The Hegemony's most advanced scanners were having what organics might call a nervous breakdown, trying to process the incoming data. "Sir?" Lieutenant Krivas's voice carried that particular tremor reserved for moments when reality decided to take a vacation. "The readings are, well, they're suggesting something that our databases classify as mythological." Vex Taylor's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. After 3 centuries of conquest, the Thexarian Hegemony had catalogued every spacefaring race in this sector. Every single one. From the crystal-singing melodians to the hive-minded collective, they'd all bent the knee to superior Thexarian technology and tactics. "Mythological," he repeated, savoring the word like a fine plasma wine. "Last I checked, Lieutenant, myths don't register on gravimetric sensors." The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of their bioneural processors. Outside the vast viewport, the stars seemed to mock them with their ancient, knowing light. The Hegemony had been expanding for over a millennium, their conquest fleets sweeping through systems like cosmic hurricanes. They'd perfected the art of subjugation down to a precise science. Step 1, arrive with overwhelming force. Step 2, demonstrate superior firepower on an uninhabited moon. Step 3, accept surrender. Step 4, install puppet government. Step 5, extract resources and move on. It had worked flawlessly for centuries. Until now. "Sir, the quantum displacement signatures they're off the charts," reported Science Officer Blocks Meridian, her usually steady voice crackling with static from her vocal processors. "Whatever's approaching, it's bigger than our entire conquest fleet. Much bigger." Vex Taylor's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary ones tracked the holographic display. The readings showed a massive gravitational disturbance moving through subspace at speeds that should have been physically impossible. But here's the thing about impossible, it had this annoying habit of showing up anyway. "Have you identified the species signature?" he asked, though something in his thoracic cavity was already churning with unease. That's the problem, sir." Krivas's tentacles were now doing that nervous dance that meant really bad news. The energy signatures matched theoretical profiles from the archives. The restricted ones. Oh, no. Vex Taylor felt his confidence drain like atmosphere from a punctured hull. The restricted archives contained exactly one file that matched these readings. One impossibly detailed file about a species that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. A species that had supposedly vanished from the galaxy so long ago that most civilizations had relegated them to bedtime stories used to frighten younglings. "Pull the file," he commanded, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The holographic display shimmered and reformed, showing ancient text in the old Hegemony script. The header read simply, "Species designation, human. Status, extinct. Threat level, maximum." "Extinct," Vex Taylor muttered. "They've been extinct for over 2,000 cycles." "Sir?" Blocks Meridian's voice was getting that quality that suggested imminent panic. "The gravitational signatures are getting stronger. Whatever's coming, it'll be here within the next rotation." The commander scrolled through the archived data, his confidence evaporating with each line. According to the records, humans were supposed to be primitive, barely capable of interstellar travel. They'd supposedly wiped themselves out in some catastrophic war long before the Hegemony had even discovered fire, but the tactical profiles, those were different. Those read like fever dreams written by paranoid strategists. Unpredictable combat doctrine. Check. Refusal to follow established rules of engagement. Double check. Tendency to treat impossible odds as personal challenges. Triple check with extra paranoia sauce. "Sir," Krivas interrupted his reading, "we're receiving a transmission." "From the approaching fleet?" "No, sir. From the planet below. The target world we were planning to acquire." Vextaler's mandibles stopped clicking. The planet below was inhabited by the Zelani, a peaceful species of traders and artists. According to their intelligence, the Zelani barely had orbital defense platforms, let alone military spacecraft. They should have surrendered the moment the hegemony fleet entered their system. Put it through. The main display flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a Zelani female, her crystalline features streaked with what appeared to be tears of joy rather than fear. "Mighty ones of the stars," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made their universal translators struggle. We thank you." "Thank us?" Vextaler felt like his brain was trying to process data in a language that didn't exist. "We're here to conquer your world." The Zelani's expression shifted to something that looked suspiciously like pity. "Oh, you poor things. You don't understand, do you? You've awakened them." "Awakened who?" "The humans." Her smile could have powered a small star. "They've been sleeping in the deep places, waiting. We've been calling to them through the quantum foam for generations, hoping, praying they would return." Before Vextaler could respond, every sensor on the bridge started screaming warnings that would have given a hegemony programmer nightmares for cycles. The gravitational disturbance wasn't approaching anymore. It had arrived. Through the viewport, space itself seemed to twist and fold like origami made from reality. Then, with a sound that shouldn't have been possible in vacuum but somehow reached them anyway, the human fleet dropped out of whatever impossible dimension they'd been traveling through. Vextaler's jaw dropped. Then his backup jaw dropped. Then his emergency jaw, which he'd never actually used before, decided to join the dropping party. The human ships weren't ships in any sense that made engineering sense. They were organic. Curved like living things, covered in what looked like metallic skin that rippled and shifted. Some were massive, dwarfing even the hegemony's dreadnoughts. Others were sleek and predatory, darting between their larger cousins like schools of metallic fish, but it was the quantity that made his consciousness threaten to shut down completely. There weren't dozens of them. There weren't hundreds, there were thousands. "Sir," whispered Krivas, "our tactical computers are, they're crying." And indeed, the sophisticated AI systems were producing sounds that could only be described as electronic sobbing as they tried to process threat assessments for a fleet that broke every known law of military logistics. The Zelani on the screen was practically glowing with happiness. "They heard our call across the centuries. The protectors have returned." Protectors. The word hit Vextaler like a plasma bolt to the thorax. Humans weren't just supposed to be extinct. According to the deepest, most classified files in the hegemony archives, they were supposed to be the reason half the ancient empires had disappeared. "Commander," Blox Meridian's voice had gone completely flat with shock, "we're being hailed." "By the humans?" "Yes, sir. Audio only. The signal is, it's coming from everywhere at once." Vextaler straightened his posture, calling upon 3 centuries of military bearing. "Put them through." The voice that filled the bridge was unmistakably organic, warm with an underlying current of something that made every survival instinct Vextaler possessed start screaming. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the human vessel, Inevitable Consequence. You have exactly 30 seconds to explain why your weapons are trained on our friends." The tone was conversational. Polite, even. Which somehow made it infinitely more terrifying than any battle roar would have been. Vextaler felt his vocal cords seize up. Behind him, he could hear various bridge officers making sounds that suggested their higher brain functions had temporarily relocated to other dimensions. 29 seconds and counting. 28 seconds, Commander Vextaler's throat made a sound like a dying atmospheric processor. Around him, the bridge crew had achieved levels of panic that required new scientific classifications. Lieutenant Krivas was actually vibrating at a frequency that was making the deck plating hum. Captain Vasquez," Vextaler finally managed, his voice cracking like a pubescent hegemony cadet. "This is Commander Vextaler of the Thexarian Conquest fleet. We are here under the authority of the hegemony to invade a peaceful world and enslave its population." The human's voice carried that same terrifying politeness. Yes, we figured that part out. 15 seconds. The tactical display was now showing energy readings that made their previous impossible readings look quaint. The human ships weren't just powerful. They were radiating energy signatures that suggested they could probably crack planets if they felt particularly motivated. But wait, Vex Taylor said, grasping at the last threads of his military training. You're supposed to be extinct. Our records clearly state that humans destroyed themselves over 2 millennia ago. A sound came through the communication channel that took their universal translators several microseconds to identify. It was laughter. Human laughter. Which, according to the archived behavioral profiles, could mean anything from genuine amusement to imminent ultraviolence. Oh, that old story? Captain Vasquez sounded genuinely amused. Yeah, we let people think that. Amazing how much trouble you can avoid when everyone believes you don't exist. 5 seconds. Science Officer Block's Meridian was frantically scrolling through tactical databases, her processors generating so much heat they were creating visible distortions in the air. Sir, I'm reading weapons signatures that don't match anything in our threat assessment protocols. 3 seconds. Captain Vasquez. Vex Taylor's voice reached frequencies that normally required specialized equipment to produce. We're willing to negotiate. 2. The Zelani on the secondary display was watching this exchange with what could only be described as satisfied vindication. Her people had been sending quantum prayers into the void for generations, and apparently, someone had been listening. 1. We surrender. Vex Taylor shrieked, his dignity abandoning ship faster than escape pods from a reactor breach. Silence, then, that terrifying chuckle again. Well, that was anticlimactic. We were really hoping you'd choose the hard way. Elena Vasquez to all human vessels, stand down from combat readiness. Apparently, these ones have functioning survival instincts. The energy readings on their sensors didn't decrease. If anything, they seemed to intensify, as if the human fleet was somehow disappointed by the lack of violence. However, Captain Vasquez continued, and Vex Taylor felt his organs rearrange themselves in preparation for bad news. Surrender doesn't quite cover the damages here. You see, you've interrupted a very important cultural exchange between humans and Zelani. Do you have any idea how long we've been planning this reunion? Vex Taylor looked at the Zelani on screen, who was nodding enthusiastically. The songs. The beautiful songs we've been composing for centuries, waiting for their return. 2,000 years, Captain Vasquez said, and now her voice carried an edge that could have cut through their hull plating. 2,000 years of thinking our friends had been wiped out by some conquest-happy empire. 2,000 years of mourning. And then we find out they're alive, and some chrome-plated megalomaniacs are pointing guns at them. The bridge fell silent except for the sound of various crew members' nervous systems short-circuiting. Vex Taylor realized that his species' conquest doctrine had a fatal flaw. It assumed that victims didn't have friends. Really dangerous friends with a documented history of holding grudges. What do you want?" he whispered. "Oh, now that's the right question." The cheerfulness returning to Captain Vasquez's voice was somehow worse than the anger. "First, you're going to apologize to the Zelani. Properly. With the full diplomatic protocols. Done. Second, you're going to send a message to your hegemony explaining that this system is now under human protection. Along with any other system inhabited by species we consider friends. Which, by the way, is most of them." Vex Taylor felt his worldview crumbling like a sandcastle in a tsunami. "Most of them? Did you really think you were the only ones who'd been looking for us? Half the galaxy has been sending out quantum beacons for centuries. Turns out, lots of species remember the old stories about humans. The ones where we show up when bullies get too big for their britches." Lieutenant Krivos was making sounds like a deflating gas bladder. "Sir, I'm getting reports from across the fleet. Human ships they're everywhere. They're not just here. They're at every hegemony conquest fleet in the sector. The tactical display updated to show a galactic map dotted with red warning indicators. Each one represented a hegemony fleet that was currently having the same conversation Thexarian was having. The humans hadn't just returned. They'd returned everywhere, simultaneously. How is that possible? Blox Meridian whispered. Quantum entanglement communication networks, Captain Vasquez replied casually, as if she'd been listening to their private conversation. We've been building them for 2 millennia. Amazing what you can accomplish when you're not wasting time conquering people. The Zelani delegate leaned forward on her display. The humans taught us the principles before they went to sleep. We've been refining the technology, preparing for their return. Sleep? Thexarian felt like his brain was trying to process information in a language that didn't exist. You were sleeping? Stasis, Captain Vasquez explained. Voluntary hibernation in deep space while our automated systems watched over our friends. We figured if we stayed active, sooner or later someone would notice us and start another war. This way, we got to rest up while keeping an eye on things. But the archives said you destroyed yourselves. Oh, that. The laughter again. We may have encouraged that interpretation. Amazing how convincing fake archaeological evidence can be when you've got 2,000 years to plant it. Thexarian's legs gave out, and he collapsed into his command chair. The Thexarian hegemony had built its entire expansion strategy on the assumption that humans were extinct. Their whole military doctrine was based on facing predictable, rational opponents who followed established rules of warfare. Humans, according to the classified files, didn't believe in established rules. They believed in making up new rules as they went along, usually while laughing. So what happens now? He asked, the fight completely drained out of him. Now you get to make a choice. Captain Vasquez's tone became businesslike. You can continue your conquest campaigns and deal with us every single time you threaten one of our friends. Or, you can join the Galactic Cooperation Council and start building things instead of breaking them. Galactic Cooperation Council? The Zelani's harmonics shifted to something that sounded like pure joy. It's what we've been working toward for centuries. A galaxy where species work together instead of conquering each other. And if we refuse? The silence stretched for exactly 10 seconds. Then Captain Vasquez spoke again, and her voice carried all the warmth of deep space. Commander, in the past hour, 37 hegemony conquest fleets have surrendered to human forces. Your empire's expansion has been permanently halted. Your choice isn't whether to stop conquering. Your choice is whether you want to do it the easy way or the way that requires us to get creative. Science Officer Blox Meridian looked up from her console, her optical sensors wide with terror. Sir, I'm reading the human fleet's full capabilities now. They're not just more advanced than us. They're more advanced than anything in our theoretical frameworks. Those ships could sterilize star systems. But they won't, the Zelani said gently. That's why they're special. They have the power to destroy everything, but they choose to protect instead. Captain Vasquez's voice softened slightly. Look, Commander, we know this is a lot to process. Your entire civilization just learned that the universe is bigger and stranger than you thought. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. The Cooperation Council has been building some pretty amazing stuff while you've been focused on conquest. Terraforming technology that can restore dead worlds. Medical advances that have eliminated disease in 47 species. Cultural exchange programs that have produced art you can't even imagine. Thexarian looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all staring at him with expressions that suggested their worldview had been fed through a particle accelerator and reassembled by committee. What if we choose cooperation? He asked quietly. Then you get to help build something magnificent instead of tearing things down. Plus, you get to meet some of the most interesting species in the galaxy. Did you know the Melodians have figured out how to sing planets into new orbital configurations? Or that the Tinker Collective has built space habitats that are basically pocket universes? The commander felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 centuries of military service. Hope. And if any of our enemies come looking for trouble? Captain Vasquez's laughter this time carried genuine warmth. Commander, you just learned that humans are real and that we keep our promises. Do you really think anyone's going to mess with a galaxy under our protection? Vex Taylor looked at the tactical display showing thousands of human ships, each one capable of feats that redefined possibility. Then he looked at the Zelani delegate, whose expression carried 2,000 years of patient faith rewarded. "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "Stand down all weapons. Send a message to Hegemony Command. Tell them." He paused, then smiled for the first time in decades. "Tell them we're going to try something new." Outside the viewport, the human ships began to move in formations that looked less like military deployment and more like a cosmic dance. The age of conquest was over, the age of cooperation had begun, and somewhere in the deep places between stars, other sleeping guardians smiled in their dreams.